There is one question that has stopped more personal brands before they even started than any other question in existence. What is my niche? Not lack of skill, not lack of time, not even lack of resources, which is usually the first thing people blame because it sounds more respectable than the truth. The truth is that people sit frozen in front of a blank content calendar asking themselves what they should be known for, terrified that if they pick the wrong thing, they are stuck with it forever, like a tattoo. So instead of starting, people delay. They plan, they research, they watch other creators try to figure out their niche, which is somehow considered productive, even though it produces nothing. And in trying to find the perfect niche, they never build anything at all. So let me answer the question directly right now in the first minute of this video, because you do not need to wait for it. The best niche is your life. Let me explain exactly what that means. Let me use myself as an example because I think it explains this better than any theory could. I started creating content a couple of years ago, and every time I started, I would stop. And every time I stopped, it would take months, sometimes a full year, before I started again. There were two reasons for this. First, perfectionism. I was extremely particular about the quality of what I wanted to eat out, which is a polite way of saying I would rather produce nothing than produce something imperfect, which is a genuinely terrible strategy if your goal is to actually build an audience. But the second reason was more important. My life kept changing. I moved from graphic design to web design to a brand design and picked up multiple other skills along the way. I even explored music at one point. I have done so many different things, and there was never a long period where I stayed inside just one identity. And here is what I eventually realized: this is not a personal problem, this is a human experience. Almost nobody lives a perfectly linear, single threaded life. We contain multitudes. That realization changes everything about how you should understand the word niche. Take the Kardashians as an example, because whatever your opinion of them, they are an extremely useful case study in this exact phenomenon. These are individuals who grew up entirely in the public eye, and if you study their journey carefully, you will notice something important. They are doing things today they did not even imagine 10 years ago. Beauty empires, shapewear companies, private equity, a prison reform advocacy effort that genuinely surprised people. From the outside, their brand still looks remarkably consistent. Why? Because they were never building a fixed identity in the first place. They were building a life in motion. And over time, the motion itself becomes the brand. This is what a personal brand actually is. Not a fixed category you lock into on day one, like a mobile phone contract you will regret in 18 months. A spectrum, and a spectrum is simply a life lived over time, documented honestly with all its shifts and changes intact. So if you're an ophthalmologist, an eye doctor, you can absolutely start by creating content around eye health, vision, and your professional expertise. And you can go very far with that alone. There is a real demand and real authority available to you there. But the mistake many people make is believing that this is where it must end. They assume that choosing one niche means a life sentence inside it. That assumption is what limits most people far more than any actual external constraint ever could. If this is shifting how you think about your own niche, subscribe. Every week I go deeper on what it actually takes to build a personal brand that can grow and change without falling apart. Hit subscribe and stay with me. If you look closely at the strongest personal brands in the world, you will see something that contradicts almost everything the niche down crowd tells you. They did not grow because they stayed fixed. They grew because they expanded. They allowed more of their actual life to be seen. Take Tony Robbins. He started as a self-help coach and motivational speaker, focused heavily on personal development and performance psychology. The seminars, the fireworks, the cassette tapes that an entire generation of people listened to in their cars. But over time, his brand evolved considerably. His brand did not stay powerful because it stayed the same. It stayed powerful because it adapted with him. As he grew, his expression grew with him, and his audience did not abandon him for it. They expanded their understanding of who he was. The same way you update your understanding of an old friend who got really into rock climbing in their 40s. You do not stop being friends with them. You just adjust your mental model slightly and ask fewer questions about the harnesses. Now, this raises an important and slightly uncomfortable question. Does this mean people can completely change direction? Can someone who has spent years talking about one belief system shift entirely towards another because of a genuine change in conviction? Can a financial expert pivot into something completely unrelated? The answer is yes, but with context, because human beings are not static. We change, we evolve, we rethink, we outgrow old beliefs the way we outgrow old phone cases, except the process takes considerably longer and involves significantly more soul searching. Even public figures we assume are permanently fixed often evolve dramatically over time. Take J.D. Vance, the Vice President of the United States, as an example. At one point, he was openly critical of Donald Trump. He disagreed with him publicly and expressed strong opposition to his leadership and ideas. Years later, his position changed significantly. He has publicly acknowledged that his earlier assessment was wrong, and today he stands in alignment with the very position he once opposed. This shift is not unusual, it is human. People evolve as they gain more information, more experience, and more perspective. The real issue is never that people change. The issue is that people feel guilty for changing because they believe they must remain consistent with a past version of themselves forever. Like that past version signed a contract on their behalf without asking. The biggest cages humans live in are not built by society, they are built internally. We trap ourselves by assuming that growth must still look like consistency, but real growth often looks like change. Visible, sometimes uncomfortable, occasionally confusing to people who knew the earlier version of you. Change. So what does this mean practically? If I start a YouTube channel talking about football today, and in a year my interest shifts, does that mean my channel is true? No, because modern platforms already support evolution in a way that did not exist a decade ago. You can create multiple channels, you can create multiple pages, you can build multiple expressions of yourself without any one of them cannibalizing the others. Gary Vee is a clear example of this in practice. He operates multiple content streams across different platforms: business content, motivational content, media content, culture-focused content, all reflecting different aspects of his thinking, run almost like a media company rather than a single personality trying to be one thing to everyone. The point of this is not confusion, the point is range. Now, does this mean you need 10 channels starting tomorrow? Absolutely not. Please do not do that. The wisdom here is much simpler than that and significantly less exhausting. Start where you are. Build from who you are today. Do not wait until you have figured out your so-called final niche before you begin, because that final version of you does not exist yet. And waiting for someone who is not finished growing to show up is not a strategy. It is a procrastination wearing a very convicting disguise. But stay open enough to evolve when life naturally pulls you in new directions, because you are not a fixed identity. You are a process, and your personal brand should reflect that process honestly, rather than performing a version of consistency that was never true to begin with. If you're ready to start building a personal brand around who you actually are right now, without waiting for a final version of yourself that does not exist, my agency offers the Brand Launch UK. Starting from $1,000, we do a full brand audit, build your brand strategy document, design a complete visual identity, and deliver a one-page website that positions you clearly from day one. The link is in the description. So, do not spend years trying to find the perfect niche. There is only your life, lived honestly and documented as it happens. Start with your life. Start with your present self, fully aware that your present self is not your final self and was never supposed to be. Allow your niche to become what it was always meant to be, not a category, not a cage, a reflection of your evolution. Subscribe and follow. I document all of this in real time. The pivots, the lessons, the moments where I genuinely was not sure what I was doing. Nothing edited out. See you in the next one.